AFCS unclassified black and white photos of these craft.
Well, now, you know what the Foreign Technology Division was headed by? Colonel Corso.
Yes.
That's fascinating stuff.
Yes.
And, have you ever read Day After Roswell by Philip Corso?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, for our listeners, for anyone that wants a good book, pick up Day After Roswell, for sure. Keith, are you still with us? Did Keith drop again?
I think so.
Okay.
And for you Washingtonians, this one report, History of the Project, which is in my hand, which is a 3-page document, starts off with, following the Kenneth Arnold sighting on 24th of June, 1947, wide news coverage of public reports of flying discs or saucers created sufficient concern at high military echelons to authorize AMC to conduct a preliminary investigation into these reports. That led to, and it has a bunch of dates on here, that led to, it also mentions J. Allen Hynek. It also mentions Dr. Paul Fitz, Air Weather Service, Dr. G. Valley, a number of different names on here. It is just intriguing what is out there. Absolutely intriguing.
Oh, that is fascinating, Dave. Let me jump in here and just ask you to clarify. Are you saying that Dr. Hynek is mentioned in that document on or around 1947, well before Project Blue?
I will read it right now. It says, give me a couple seconds here. It says, after Project Sign report, work continued along the same lines.
We sent your call to our voice message system.
Inner voice.
You might want to hang
up. Isn't available right now. When you hear the beep, record your message.
It's us, Keith. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So this says, after Project Sign report, work continued along the same lines, and a Project Grudge report was published and released in August 1949 by AMC. This report contained analysis of 244 cases and concluded that unidentified flying objects reports resulted from A, misinterpretation of conventional objects, B, mass hysteria or war nerves, C, hoaxes, and or D, psychopathological persons. Based upon these conclusions, AMC recommended that investigation and study of this type of report be reduced in scope. Major portions of this work were performed under contract by Ohio State University Professor Hynek, present consultant to Air Force on Project Blue Book, the Rand Corporation, Dr. G. Valley, Dr. Paul Fitz, Air Weather Service, 3610th Electronics Section of the U.S. Weather Bureau. So yes, he was included in 1949.
And, by the way, you mentioned J. Vallée. Jacques Vallée was involved there.
Dr. G is in George. G is in George Valley, Valley.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, no Vallée didn't come into the picture until I don't think about the 1980s or so.
Yeah.
I believe he wrote a couple of books in the 70s, but he, to my knowledge, Vallée didn't have anything to do with Blue Book.
So this also says here, which takes us back to Eisenhower, it says, by 1953, Air Force responsibility for the UFO program had become firmly established. It was now apparent that some directives were necessary in order to standardize investigative procedures and formulate policy.
Man, these are great documents. This is a find of a century, as Chris was saying here.
Yeah, well,
so that shows us the point that Hynek knew of, had studied about UFOs and aliens before Blue Book.
Well,
which does differ from the show.
Dr. Hynek had worked with the Air Force prior to Blue Book on other projects. That much we know.
But it mostly talked about telemetry sensor, didn't it? Or some
Yes,
not
you're right.
telemetry sensor.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it like in the show, they don't actually mention that he ever. They almost make it seem like he had never had any type of contact with Sign, or what was the other one? Grudge.
Right.
Yeah, Sign or Grudge.
Yes. Here's an actual dogfight case with a UFO. So this happened on the 18th of November, 1948, 2200 hours at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. The pilot of a T-6 reported seeing an object over the base at 1,700 feet. Object was an oblong ball with one light, no wings, no exhaust, in landing light of T6. It had dull gray glow and was thought to be smaller than T6. Pilot made passes and object evaded by going above aircraft. T6 tried to close in very tight climbing turns, but object turned inside the aircraft. Object was lost after 10 minutes at 7,500 feet. Its speed seemed to vary between 80 miles an hour. The typing is very hard here. 30 miles per hour and 60 miles an hour. The object described was a synoptic balloon. It has been showed that it is very difficult for the observer to separate target motion and his own motion even in daylight, and practically impossible to do so at night. This fact has been substantiated by pilots who, in controlled experiments, attacked ordinary balloons with a T-6 in daylight with knowledge of what the object was and what it did. All of the above described maneuver were duplicated in appearance.
That's episode 1.
Bingo.
Coming soon to History
Yes.
Channel near you.
But yeah, these documents are absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Now, I want to bring up, Roswell happened in 47. The Maury Island incident happened in 47. Blue Book didn't happen until what, 52?
Right. But it was the result of the prior projects, too.
And it kind of shows you the mindset, that the Air Force was not skeptical by this time of UFOs, because they'd already had multiple incidents. Kenneth Arnold with the sightings over, Mount Rainier heads towards Spokane. The Roswell, I believe the Russian Roswell incident happened somewhere in between there, which could actually bring in why the Russians would be interested in why there was a Project Blue Book when they already had their own Russian Roswell.
Well, don't forget too, Eric, that they were also very intrigued with what was happening in the nuclear arms race at that time in New Mexico. That was a very, very difficult political time.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. I'm just trying to show a parallel. Were the Russians interested in the nuclear arms race, or were they actually interested in Project Blue Book? Because it could go either way.
Yeah, they could have thought Blue Book was a cover-up for the arms race.
Very, very possible. But the Russians had their own UFO projects going on as well. Chris, what's your thoughts?
I'm still thinking about these letters that Dave was reading. Those are, amazing. Wow.
So you had another question as to far as what's it mean for today.
Yeah.
I think shows like Roswell, shows like Blue Book, the more they bring these out to the public and they show them like Blue Book is doing as fact, it makes the field of ufology more acceptable and more open each time they produce a show like this. So when you have a team like FMP that deals with these issues, it's going to bring out more people that's going to ask more questions.
You just wonder, or I sat and wondered when I was watching this movie of some of the older generation that may be sitting at home watching these movies and thinking, I knew I saw something. I knew it was real. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, it's coming out now for some of the way older generation.
And, perfect point. And a question I want to bring up. So what does everyone think? The mindset of the older generation that went through, that they were younger during Blue Book and are still alive today, and even through the 70s with Travis Walton, with, some of the more famous abduction scenarios, versus Generation Z and Generation X we see today. Do you think the younger generation is going to be more open to UFOs because of the events that have happened in the last 50, 60 years?
No. And I say that fast is because I think the older generation, they've basically lived with it, and a lot of people will not get accustomed to real new things, if that makes sense. The older generation, I think, has had this information in the back of their head, but just needed something like Project Blue Book to make it a reality for them. And the new generation, if it doesn't consist of a computer game, they're not going to understand it.
Okay, but for argument's sake, and looking at the new generation, the older generation had to accept it. They were fed the information. The newer generation, with all the movies coming out, with the TV shows coming out, don't you think they're getting more involved and more intrigued?
On that, I will say I think that the new generation, it's not going to be Project Blue Book that helps them accept. It's going to be the shows like Roswell where they actually get engrossed in the show. They actually find themselves really entertained, because that's who that show is geared towards.
Yeah, it's a teeny bopper love show. Is really what it is.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Sorry, Cam.
This isn't an insult towards the newer generations, but the attention spans have significantly shortened.
Well,
they're watching the show, they're thinking about 15 different things at the same time, and that thought process is going to start with the idea of those shows.
Well, I think technology advances are what shortens the attention span. Everyone's focused on a telephone, a cell phone, or some kind of electronic device. People don't look up. They don't look straight. They look down. I think when they see the show Roswell, they're going to go, "Oh, that's cool. Maybe that could be possible." But it's not factual. It's still not giving them proof. That is just almost like it's a soap opera. It's not a soap opera even. It's just it's a sitcom
show. Yeah, it's just a show. There's no facts. I mean, who in this generation is going to believe that these two brothers and sister were raised at Roswell and hid their identity of being an alien for so many years? The new generation isn't going to believe that.
But this new generation is also born very skeptical of factual items.
The new generation is going to have to see a UFO. That's what's going to get the new generation.
I see that, yeah.
Agreed. Yes. And what I see the other problem is they're being fed that everything but Fox is fake news. You see that all the time. So what is the new generation going to believe? They're not. Well,
and look at the Comic-Con.
I'm not even bringing up politics here. This isn't even a political thing. But they're being told on the news all the time what's fake and what's not, when in all reality, they're all fake. And I
Right, and-
agree. They're going to have to see something in the skies before they'll believe.